everyone, and welcome to The Sydneyist, a weekly conversation about the city we love. Thanks to Nina for a great introduction. Oh, I need to say it's Eels, not Seals. I'm Elizabeth Farrelly, here with The Sydneyist at Eastside Radio on 89.7 FM or streaming on eastsidefm.org. My guest this evening is Professor Ian Slithers, a professor of, I'm going to say marine biology. There is a longer title at University of New South Wales, who's currently based at the Sydney Institute of Marine Science. We're going to be talking about Sydney's amazing native freshwater eels. I'm Elizabeth Farrelly, here with you on The Sydneyist at the Alan Slate studio at Eastside Radio in Paddington. And my guest is Professor Ian Slithers, who's here with me in the studio, and also with him are 2 jars of eels, which is very exciting. Not food, they're rather pickled, possibly, but not for eating purposes. Ian, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Great to be here.
I want to call you an ichthyologist, mainly because I love the word, and I've always wanted to be able to say it, and almost never can. But I'm not sure that that's quite accurate. Nevertheless, I'm going to call you an ichthyologist. Your biography on the web says that you did your PhD in Canada and postdoctoral research in Norway, a very fishy place, of course, Norway. It also says, and I love this quote, his recent research concerns frontal eddies of the East Australian current, plankton particle size, and the fisheries of offshore artificial reefs based on the supply of zooplankton, which sustains the Great Southern Reef of Australia. Recently, he's contributing to developing a novel fish ladder named the Tube Fishway, which is rather cool. Sounds like some kind of underground train, but probably not.
It is.
For Australia's many weirs and dams on rivers. It is?
Yes.
It is an underground train for fish.
Well, an underground pipe that could be a train. It's a fish train, a bit like a sushi train, only we want it to live.
Which brings us nicely to eels.
Yes.
Actually, I did want to just mention this idea of a fish ladder. I can't say fish ladder without thinking of that wonderful Irna Dunn quote, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, which always makes me laugh, which was made famous by Gloria Steinem as a sort of basis for feminism, and proves that feminists do have a sense of humour. But what is a fish ladder, and why do fish need ladders if nature didn't already provide them?
That's right. Well, there are natural barriers such as waterfalls, but humans obviously need water to supply their towns and cities, and so we put in dams and weirs so that so farmers can extract the water. Unfortunately, that blocks the passage of fish, and they just can't get around it.
Upstream.
Yeah. It blocks the movement of freshwater turtle, and it blocks the movement of platypus. However, our subject tonight, eels, don't seem to worry about that kind of thing because, as we're about to discuss, they can actually wriggle across the wet grass, even going up the wall of the Warragamba Dam and continuing on. Yes, they attempt to go up the wall of the Warragamba Dam, and Sydney Water have installed a little sort of track that they can make their way up in a little series of pools, and they go around the side of it.
Which is a fish ladder, essentially.
Essentially, it is a natural fish ladder. That's correct. So engineers build fish ladders, which are really a series of little pools. It does sound like a ladder.
Kind of jump, breathe, relax, jump. Breathe.
Correct. Yeah. And that's a fish ladder. They're quite expensive to put in. They're about $1 million per vertical meter.
What?
Wow. Well, because you've got to obviously do engineers, got to be careful of the dam wall or the dam, the retention structures wall. And so they and also need to get the land. So we're wanting to come up with something that's, better, cheaper, and to put a fish ladder inside a pipe. And a pipe is just, a nice vertical column of water, which if you can induce their behavior of all kinds of fish, not just eels, but also even potentially platypus and turtles, to swim through the pipe.
And will they like that, being in a pipe?
That's a great question, and that's what we're doing the work.
I don't think I would. If I was a platypus, I think I'd want to be outside.
Platypus, I don't know. There is my colleague,
Platypus
Professor...
psychology.
my colleague, Professor Richard Kingsford, says they do have platypus platypus at the Western Plains Zoo that could be arranged. So that's a future goal on the horizon, to see if we could get platypus to get over these weirs. They certainly, these weirs and dams certainly do structure the genetics of platypus around in eastern Australia. We know that was published just a few years ago, that there are different races and different sort of groups of platypus that are confined to
so
where
we're limiting
the
their gene pool by...
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, so we're going to have to do a program on platypus, obviously, but that's not tonight, sadly. We're going to come back to eels right now. The reason I got so interested in eels is because you hear that thing about American eels all going to the Sargasso Sea, which I never believed. And then I sort of saw the eels in the Victoria Park pond and thought, I wonder if they also migrate to the Sargasso Sea, because this thing said all the eels in the world. So I researched it and found that actually they go to the Coral Sea, which is probably just about as far, 2,000 k's or something. That's extraordinary, isn't it? And how do they do it?
It is really unbelievable that you think of this humble eel there in the Victoria Lake there beside Sydney Uni, somehow going down through all the drains and through Centennial Park and up and down into Botany Bay.
It's wild.
And going from freshwater into seawater.
Yeah.
And then getting there, then putting their skates on and moving, proverbially, but moving then out into the coastal ocean and heading north, sometimes at 200 or 300 meters of depth. Dodging their own predators, such as sharks and seals love to eat eel, and making their way up towards the sort of the west coast of New Caledonia and deep water there, and they release their eggs and then they die.
Isn't that sad? Actually, I mean, what a huge trick, and all for the sake of babies, which you don't even see, I guess.
Salmon do the same thing. Many of the delicious
same but opposite
Eastern king prawn does the same thing. They grow up in our estuaries. They swim to the north and they spawn somewhere off Coffs Harbour and towards the Queensland border. They're quite big then, those prawns. So this is not an unusual strategy where the life form grows and prepares itself for one single event. They migrate and they release their eggs.
But sometimes it's 40 years, is that right? They can live quite a long time.
The female eel can live up to, 50 or even 60 years and get very large.
In the Centennial Park ponds, and then
if they got the...
Oops, I'm 60, I've got to go to sea now.
Yes, there is a sequence of size, of light level, of temperature, of the environment, of their own DNA that says now's the time, now's the trigger.
Do we know how the trigger works?
No, we don't. No. We don't. And why there's such a wide variety of ages and sizes to do that migration, we don't really know. But usually the ones that occur in serious billabongs and freshwaters and well inland are the females, whereas the males are a little bit closer to the coast. They might be in your Victoria Pond, and they'd certainly be along in the estuaries where it's a bit brackish, and they're smaller, about half the size.
So they don't have to travel as far, and they don't live as long. I mean, it seems perfectly fair.
Well,
it,
the males have to do the migration,
but they don't have to travel as far to get there. Because
that's correct. Yeah, they don't have to go over golf courses and that's
around. The thing that astonishes me. How do they do that overland thing? That's amazing, because they have to breathe like
they
air.
Do. Well, they get
not really.
There's 20 times more oxygen in a litre of air than there would be in a litre of water. So getting oxygen from air is not so bad, except the fact that you dry out. So they would keep themselves moist, do it in the morning, or do it at dawn, do it in rain is great, and wriggle through the wet grass, and you just sort of, your mouth and your gills are kind of collapsed because they don't have the water to support them, but the oxygen is going in.
So still using their gills, it's not like they develop lungs suddenly or anything like that?
No, they do have a little swim bladder, which is the primordial lung of all vertebrates, and they do have a little duct that takes the air from the mouth, and they can burp it into their swim bladder, but to my knowledge, no one. Well, a lot of other fish do that, but to my knowledge, eels don't do that.
So they can absorb air through oxygen through their skin.
Yes,
like the whole body, kind of like a frog. Or
the skin is quite thick. Most of it comes through their mouth and through their and on their actual gills. Even though the gills are kind of collapsed because they don't have the support of the water, they're still sufficient. And they can't do it forever. They can go for like an hour or two, but then they're going to find themselves a little ditch where they can fully immerse themselves back into the fresh water and recover.
So basically, if you go for a walk on a dewy morning very early, you might find yourself in the park on the grass with an eel.
100%, yes. Or in Centennial Park. You'll
A big
see
one, actually.
Yes,
Quite big, like 2 meters or something.
Yeah, it'd be quite. They're quite shy, and
I
of
would
course,
think so.
and they're very vulnerable. So dogs and cats might get them. So they're smart enough to know if they can find any drain, any culvert,
Yes.
that's their target. To go over, to go overland across the golf green is a movement of last resort.
Amazing dedication. Do we have any idea how they know where to go?
How they navigate.
Well, it's not just navigate, is it? It's also like, I've got to get to the Coral Sea. I mean, why there, and why do they think that?
Right. To answer that question is to ask also, why does a parrot have particular blobs of yellow or red, or why does a particular tiger?
They're just like that.
So there are a couple of reasons. One is that the modern day environment selects that's the only option they have. There's also the history of where they've come from and what selective pressures that led to that migration. They are an ancient fish. Over 100 million years we've had eels floating around and traveling up towards continents and finding rivers and breeding. So why have eels gone for this particular strategy to live on land and then go into the ocean? They just do, and it works for them. It's a huge energetic cost, so they produce less eggs because they've got to migrate that distance.
Yeah.
But they survive reasonably well to come back, and their babies can live life anew. All the other questions of how the heck do those babies now up in the Lane Cove River or in Victoria Pond know then, and that would be in what we call traits that are innate.
Yeah.
That's obviously in their
Some
DNA.
sort of atavistic memory thing.
And part of and there's all kinds of aspects to the DNA we don't understand that gives them the development of enzymes and proteins, behaviors to say, I need to start doing this, and this urge, the fundamental to go.
So you use the word strategy as if it's purposeful and they kind of know what they're doing. And that does suggest that there is a point to it. So do we think that the point is to, as a gene pool thing, to kind of, we're all going to go here, so we'll all be able to swap genes and that'll be all good? Or is that how it works?
There is selection for appropriate traits, for appropriate behaviors. And if those behaviors don't result in babies, then they won't be seen.
But they could do it. Couldn't they do it in Sydney Harbour without all that trouble?
Well, you know what? Some of them actually probably do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we just don't get to see them again.
Ah.
But what is interesting there, Elizabeth, is that the eels in Japan, because they love their eels and they've researched them to death, literally.
In order to eat them.
To eat them, yeah. But also because they're so fascinated, as of all human cultures. The Europeans love their eels. The Americans, the huge ichthyological debates about the Sargasso Sea. It was really serious. And in the little microcosm of fish, that was like almost coming into fisticuffs to. And so the Japanese have really looked at, and they find that when they do tags and they put an external bit of plastic number on the side of the and also do acoustic tagging, they find that some of them don't go the whole distance. They don't migrate.
You have lazy eels.
Either lazy eels, and it suggests a couple of things, that there are different tribes or groups, subgroups. They're still the same species that don't do the same thing. But do they produce larvae that survive is the open question.
Don't know.
Yes. But the traditional view that the majority of the population undertakes this big migration and the babies come back is what probably carries the population. And you have these little fringe groups that come and they go. And if there's pollution or an oil spill or climate change, then they might disappear. But the bulk of the population...
dissenting groups of eels, like communists and kind of socialists.
Diversity is good, including for eels.
Okay, so look... I think this might be the last question about the migration thing, but it does fascinate me. How does a freshwater fish transition, if that's the right word, into being a saltwater fish for that distance? Is it difficult? I mean, it sounds difficult.
Yeah, great question. So there are all kinds of fish out there, some 30,000 species. Think of your Nemos or your bluefin tuna. Those fish cannot handle what we're about to discuss. They are, of course, stenothermal and temperature and salinity. Yeah. Any few degrees, ask any fish aquarist keeping little Nemos. If if that salinity or temperature changes much, they're gone.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a whole group of other fish that are called eurythermal that typically like to live in estuaries. Eurythermal, yes, and euryhaline, meaning they like variable temperatures and variable salinities.
It means they're tolerant.
They're tolerant, and
how's that spelled?
That's their briar patch. EURY.
Oh, okay.
Thermal,
as in eurythmics.
Yes, I guess so, which means that they can tolerate highly variable temperatures and highly variable salinities.
Mm-hmm.
And so those kinds of really physiologically challenging situations, which is what you're getting at, is nevertheless their briar patch.
Because most fish would just blow up.
That's right.
They just absorb. Is that right?
Yes. Well,
water.
That's right. So a saltwater fish in fresh water would have water flooding into to go and saltwater fish would have water flooding into it, whereas I always think about this.
The other way around, it kind of shrivels.
That's right. Whereas a freshwater fish going to saltwater, it would have all its water would be going, it'd be desiccated.
Yes, that's right.
So they have a series of enzymes that are switched on, especially in the gills, actually, not the kidneys, that do a lot of the heavy lifting for chucking out all that salt and chlorine. So a saltwater fish has to drink salt water, and then its gills do a lot of energetic work to chuck out sodium and chloride mostly, and the kidneys do a little bit.
And then so that develops as they travel over grass and sewers and what have you, between the pond and the sea. That transition happens gradually?
Yes, it does. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It does happen within about a couple of weeks. I can't give the definitive reference on that, but it's true. They acclimate is the term, where they're different suite of enzymes that are necessary to either in the salt water they're going to be chucking salt out, whereas in fresh water they're grabbing those salts and especially calcium salts and bring that in.
Yes.
And the eel living in fresh water, its kidneys are chucking out all that useless water that they release so copious amounts of urine. But when they go to salt water, it's just the opposite. And so they have to adjust for those different situations, and it's part of their physiology. That turns on a whole suite of cascade of events that have been researched, and it is amazing they can do it. Obviously, salmon do this.
Yeah.
We have our own little native galaxids, these little native Australian trouts, cute little guys. They also go down to estuaries to spawn, or in the coastal ocean, and they have to go through the same physiological hoops. Yeah.
So when you say urine, fish pee, do they?
Yes. So freshwater fish pee a lot, whereas saltwater fish rarely pee at all.
I'm not sure if we're allowed to say that on radio, but anyway, we have now.
Water's very important when you're in saltwater.
That's the perfect time to take a music break.
Get out of that bed, wash your face and hands. Get out of that bed, wash your face and hands. Well, you get in that kitchen, make some noise with the pots and pans. Well, you wear those dresses, the sun comes shining through. Well, you wear those dresses, the sun comes shining through. I can't believe my eyes, all the mess belongs to you. I believe to the soul you never did not lie. I believe to the soul you were devil in I know. Well, Lord, I work the faster my money goes. I said shake, round and roll. Shake, round and roll. Shake, round and roll. Shake, round and roll. Well, you won't do right to save your doggone soul. Yeah, blood, blood.
Started out so innocent. 17 didn't make no difference. All my friends had experience, so much to learn, so much to hear. Things got serious. Here and now, it's your time to shine. You're the last chick standing up against the line. Think I'm getting butterflies. Did that hit you by surprise? Step by step, I know you're gonna think I overstepped. You shouldn't judge at my every move, 'cause I'm here to tell you that I disapprove of all that. I'm just on a one-way street to new things, waiting to see what the weekend brings. When they say you've changed, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Change. Now don't you dare tell me you disapprove of change. Yeah, I don't know why you can't handle it. Take a second, honey. Girl, you ain't seen nothing. Pick up where you left off, don't you? Freeze up like you were told off. It's the same thing every time we come around to it. That same friend, she don't wanna get around in it. The fact that you're growing older, safe to say that no one told her. Just because you've done it all before doesn't mean that you come knocking on my door, does it? Oh, step by step, I know you're gonna think I overstepped. You shouldn't judge at my every move. I'm here to tell you that I disapprove of all that. I'm just on a one-way street to new things, waiting to see what the weekend brings. When they say you've changed, yeah, isn't that what we're supposed to do? You don't you dare tell me you disapprove of change. Yeah, I don't know why you can't handle it. Take a second, honey. Girl, you ain't seen nothing. Yeah, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Now don't you dare tell me you disapprove of change. I think I know why you can't handle it. Take a second, honey. Girl, you ain't seen nothing.
That was Ruby Jackson, a local Sydney R&B vocalist, with a song called, excuse me, You've Changed. I'm Elizabeth Farrelly, here with you on the Sydneyist at Eastside Radio, 89.7 FM, and I'm here with Professor Ian Slithers. We're talking all things eel, and we're in the Alan Slate studio, I'm being reminded to remind you. So, Ian, back to Sydney's eels. So they're natives, aren't they, these particular eels that we're talking about?
That's right. We have two species of freshwater eel. We have the short-fin one, which most Sydney-siders would be aware of, and occasionally they might see the long-finned eel, which gets slightly larger, and they're typically more found along the Queensland coast.
Yes. So it's they're predators, aren't they? They're kind of apex predators. I mean, we think of them as being food, but for them, they're actually quite serious hunters.
They are. They love to eat, obviously, fish and small crustacea, but there's lots of anecdotal stories of them eating ducklings.
Yes. Or ducklings' legs. I always think of those duckling, the legs hanging down below the water and think, oh,
delicious.
I'm not sure that, yes. And I read somewhere that they eat snakes even, and ricali, the native water rat. Then is that the case? Or just...
Yes,
maybe.
They certainly, when they've caught an eel and it looks like a big swollen gut, you would be tempted to, and you want to eat the eel, of course, and be tempted to say, well, what was its last meal, just so I can be informed. And they would find certainly baby juvenile water rats for sure. They would be fair game. Whole ducklings would definitely go down the hatch.
Yeah,
lots of fish would definitely be found there as well. They really love those little freshwater crayfish and the freshwater shrimp. that they
Yes.
would eat.
Yeah.
So they I guess an apex predator brings to mind, an eagle or a shark, and they are what we call intermediate or meso predators.
Yes.
Because eels are certainly
They're
eaten
also
by shark.
yes.
Oh, shark love to eat eels, and so do a lot of pelicans.
So
and
I
birds.
suppose in their freshwater habitat, they're relatively safe, but as soon as they get to sea, it's different. Is that
That's
right?
right. They are vulnerable when they get to sea, which is why we think they migrate at such depths at 200 meters. So which is really deep. It's cold.
Yes.
Most of the action for fishing that we all know and love occurs in the top 100 meters. That's where the sunlight is still apparent. That's where the algae does all the photosynthesis and the zooplankton, which then feeds the small fish, the big ones, etc. But those eels have stopped when they're leaving that estuary. They've stopped feeding.
Whoa.
Their gut regresses, their gonad grows, their eye grows, they become more silvery, and they go through like a metamorphosis as they prepare that migration. And it's a huge fundamental change to their whole physiology, along with what we mentioned earlier about their gills and their kidneys. There's a lot more going on in terms of their morphology, their appearance, and they become silver eels is the term. Both the short fin and the long fins are called silver eels, and off they go. They're migrating, and they're not feeding at all on that trip. That 3,000 kilometers up to the Coral Sea, they're just swimming.
Got one job.
One job.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the change in appearance is curious, since it's not like they're going to go and mate or tractor mate. They just put, is that right? They put the eggs into the sea and then the sperm into the sea, and that kind of...
They do have, we don't know.
Okay.
They've put down cameras to look at this. There's an absolute fascination with the sargasso. They've even looked to see if they could find the remains of the eels and the sargasso on the seafloor. You imagine every year this going on, it must
Because they
accumulate.
just drop to the floor after they've done
Eventually,
their...
yeah. But then there's a lot of intense activity down there with
Yes.
crabs and other fish, gobbling them up, and
Yes.
they would be broken down quite quickly. But they have these ear bones, which are really dense little... and
Ear bones.
Ear bones, yes. They're used for balance and orientation.
Eel ear bones.
Well, all fish have 3 pairs, and they grow...
3 pairs of ears. Is that right?
Ear bones, yeah, just like we have in our semicircular canals of the humans.
Okay.
And we have about 10,000 little ooconia, little calcite, which all get stirred up if we get seasick or
Yes.
it gets spun down at Luna Park. But the eels, they fish, they need a much more denser lump of calcium carbonate, and that inertia is a bit like little accelerometers. And they grow in annual increments, and they're really hard. Sometimes they're used as sea jewelry. They're quite pretty. I gave my mum some earrings once, and she used to say that's what my son studies. But which is pretty, I know, a long time ago. A long time ago. Rest her soul. But now, so they've been looking for those on the seafloor, and it's really been difficult. You can find shark teeth, of course, they would remain on the seafloor, and you can find like accumulations of those. So I'm sorry, that was a long way of saying we don't really know what they're actually doing there, but we do know they're at depth, and they would use smell. They have very good ability to smell each other, and if there's a spawning aggregation, they would go for that.
Yes.
And then there must be a great swarm of eels. It would be absolutely fascinating if David Attenborough can get his cameras down there and see in that darkness, all they're relying on is just smell and touch, and they're releasing what we call the gametes, the eggs and the sperm, and these then fertilize externally, and they start to drift up. And they go through all their cell divisions, and they grow into a little baby eel.
I have to interrupt there because we've got about 1 minute left to talk, which is a shame. And I just want to touch on the history of eels with humans. You said something about the humble eel, and I think of jellied eels in East End of London as a traditional food. But let's just fill us in on this human relationship with eels.
Yes, the glass eels and the elvers, when they come back in, are often scooped up, certainly in Spain, Italy, and used in salads and pickled. But the real delicacy is when they get up to this size I've got in front of me in this jar here, about 30 centimeters long. They're smoked, and it's an absolute delicacy. In some countries, they actually dominate the fresh food consumption. There's a big interest in Australia, always has been, to do aquaculture of eels.
Yes.
We can't close the life cycle of eels because of that Coral Sea thing.
So we don't know how to fake the...
Well, there's a license for a few select people to be able to harvest the young glass eels as they arrive back into the estuary and turn into little elvers, and they can harvest those and then put them into aquaculture facilities to grow them up to about this size, and then they can either smoke
eat
them, freeze them, export them, export
And
market.
you're comfortable with your beloved eels being eaten, are you?
Well, they're watching that harvest very, very carefully. Yes, I have had some eel. It's bony. But most of the
It is bony, lots
Yeah.
of fine bones.
fine bones. They not only have the ribs, but also have little intermuscular bones as well.
Yeah. We're going to have to stop there. I'm really sorry. We've been talking eels with Professor Ian Slithers from Sydney Institute of Marine Biology.